questions that we had. One person, one, stand up and tell us what you took away from the discussions yesterday. If you didn't agree with them, you can say that, nope, I didn't agree with it. I know I am a very social person. I believe in multi-stakeholderism. So if anybody advocates for something else, there's likely to be a debate. But let's just get from yourselves.
Well, thanks, eh? My name is Gauteng. I come from YEM. And what I took from yesterday is that there's a lot of things that we don't know. And there's a lot of things that you'll have to find out. We have to put ourselves in the right positions to find them out. But what I would like to ask also, I didn't get a chance to ask, is that seeing that a lot of influence comes from the media, and we know who control the media, and the skills and the empowerment that we're looking for come from the media. How can we empower ourselves whilst the people that control the media give us empowerment by just being employees? So that's the question I'm willing to hear from you.
So that would be a question to Nomshado. How do we leverage of the media for empowerment? How do we not allow ourselves to be excluded from being empowered? Okay, we'll attempt to answer it.
Morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Homoyo, and I have a question on yesterday, we discussed a lot, and I have a question to everybody who is presenting to how can they help youth like myself to protect ourselves from cybersecurity and the internet. Yeah.
So it's an online harm day today. And I'm glad that we've got Tepiso, who's also going to be data protection. She's hopefully going to be able to answer to some of the questions that you are asking. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Simpiwe Kumete. My main question was actually on the issue of how easily accessible are we to the tools of cybersecurity? Because for most people that actually don't know, the internet provides everything. Like the facial recognition system that was mentioned, it's also on the internet. Hacking comes from the internet. Everything is coming from the internet. So why aren't we being provided with the necessary education? Actually, why aren't certain people provided with the necessary information on how to keep their digital data safe? Because what Google does is it offers you those few options whereby you're going to be able to keep your data safe, but you're not 100% sure. So why is it that we are not being taught on that? We're actually being thrown somewhere else.
Data protection, Tsepiso, I'm leaving that to your presentation. But do you have any questions online?
Morning, everyone. My name is Cleopatra Shapulosa. Yesterday was very engaging. I learned a lot about the history of the internet. I also learned about the law, how it accommodates the internet, how it works correlation with the internet. I learned a lot about how multilateral agreements gave birth to many of the acts like the Protea Act that we have in South Africa. I also learned that we must be robust, we must be engaging, we must be engaging with the treasury, we must be engaging with how the laws are made in the country. Policy making as youth, we have the power and we are capable. The more we engage, the more we talk, it's then that the country can move to a better state. That's what I learned yesterday.
Increased participation from the youth in policy making process. Online, do you guys want to share Remote Hub Cape Town? Anything you'd like to share? I think we have a shy bunch. Nothing from Hype? Nothing from Soweto?
Yes, we have something from Soweto.
Okay, let's zoom into the Soweto Remote Hub.
Right, sorry about that. Good morning, everybody. from our side, we would like to find out if after this session, we could get some information that could guide the youth in a career path on the different topics that were mentioned. So the media side, the cybersecurity side, the DNS side, and the policy side with ZADNA. If maybe each organization that was presenting could do just a small PDF with a career guideline for the young people that were here. Things like what to study, where to apply for internships, and if there's any opportunities for workplace learning. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's me. That's a task directly to me, but I will definitely do that. Ness, are you ready? Is Dennis ready? He is our first presenter, and he will be. Is he not ready? Can you please help him, Sidi? But then while we try to get Dennis ready, because his presentation starts in a minute's time, just chat to him there. Maybe from Advocate Nandipa, is there something that you'd like to respond to as per the questions that have been asked?
Thank you so much, and thank you for the participation. We were in a class, but let me start with the most important question, which was raised about it's well and good to talk English, but what then? It's amazing that I had a same discussion with some professors yesterday, where I was talking about the cyber law program that I was marketing, but I was talking about how do we balance the law with the assistance to people. The same issue we had with Papaya, because when we were working on Papaya, we began to say there are telemarketers. How do we protect that grandmother in the Eastern Cape who always get calls that from someone she does not know? It's amazing that that answer was only provided a week ago, where now the telemarketers are again educated on how to deal with that. The truth of the matter is that, and I have the grace that I actually researched into cybersecurity in South Africa. And I looked at Germany, I looked at it was Germany, and the reason with that I used Germany is the historical effect. Then I looked at US, and interestingly, I looked at China. You can imagine what I was having. But one thing that came out of all these states, I'm still going to tell you the African country I looked at, was that empowerment. We need to, I was telling the professors last night that where is a program that says, how do you know that you have been hacked? How do you deal with that? You don't have to call an advocate for that. There should be tips that are available. And I think this is what they are asking. There was an interesting question yesterday. Let me share the question. The question was, I go to the shopping center. I want to access the waves that are claimed to be free but not free. But they're asking for my date of birth, biographic information. The question is access to the internet and date of birth. How do they meet? And the more we ask these questions to the right people, though, I always amuse myself as I enter these high profile places, and someone says your driver's license. The first question I ask, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to keep it? And of course, I'm asking to the wrong people because they are just there to do the work. I always tell them that the reason I'm asking you is that you should have answers. Otherwise, if you don't have answers, then you are going to be a victim of a number of things, because people can end up saying, I'm not giving you because I'm not sure if you are going to keep my information safe. But it's an unequal situation because you want to enter there. It's like wanting to enter Zoom and they're saying it is recorded. And they don't say, if you don't want to be recorded, what must you do? So one thing, Zulu, that's important are ongoing programs on cyber culture, cyber resilience, just the what to know. And this is one area that I think my cyber psychologist tapped a bit into it. But I think there's a structured approach, a life orientation type of approach that we need. When we come to the program, the career side, which I'm passionate about. Look, problem, I will use my own home, UNISA. You find that our pockets were cybering in various places. It reminds me when I was in the military, we were all legal practitioners everywhere, other ones in the Air Force, in the Navy. And at some point you said, can we pull ourselves together so that we can see the strength of who we are? Now, you will have cyber in ICT. You will have cyber in psychology. You will have, because it's cross-cutting, like we said. I think for me, what becomes important is, what do you want to know? I'm the first one to say, we need a cross-cutting program. This thing of getting a piece of meat here and a piece of sugar here and a piece of milk here, it does not work. It actually, if I can confess today, is the reason why I'm having many qualifications. It's not the right thing. You must get a program, and this is what I always emphasize. When we wrote the qualification structure, the NQF or SAQA, the qualification, when we said it must have a fundamental, it must have a core, it must have an elective, we were clear that when you have a qualification like that, it will pull everything that is necessary. But be that as it may, and I'm sharing this so that as you move into your careers, it is important to have a program that provides, latest standards though about that program, like industrial engineering. It's a bit of this, a bit of this, so you don't specialize in a sense. But it gives you everything that you're looking for. If I go then to law, well, within the faculty of law, you've learned everything this week that we're doing as part of cyber law. You've learned everything that is part of your domain name, which is done as an elective the final year. So that's why I was saying you registering, it should not be difficult. And I want you to please appreciate it. I want you to clap for them. Because I'm saying now you did the final year. So the information that you have should assist you to know exactly what you are looking for. So that, let me share with them what I did when I went to you know that you can carve a qualification and it be what you want. When I went to, my studying was informed by me to being effective. I didn't want to be what is that word? I wanted to be able to be relevant all the time. Here I am, I'm in the military. I want to do masters in IP. I'm also responsible for the coordination of PIE. I then decide I want to be relevant. I'm a strategist. I'm working with our own intelligence. And I know there's a problem. Remember, sometimes the beauty about studying when you are working, there's a problem you are solving. So there was a problem of a 5G that was imminent. There was a problem of cyber threats. And I said with them, I said, I don't want a qualification for the sake of it. Tell me what's the problem. And that's how I came with cyber. By the way, I had an IP, this thing, and the question was with Sizwe. Then IP, then so what? IP is good, but mix it with something so that it gets value. So what I'm getting to, you will not believe what I'm saying, but I'm going to tell you. I went to UP to do IP program, LLM IP, but I left with a LLM IP and cyber law because I wanted to be effective. It does not exist. Don't look for it. I manufactured it. And I graduated. I was the only one graduating in it. I'm saying you can get what you want. You can be as creative as you want so that you get what you want. So be intentional. Wherever you go, you will get something that is what you want. You will look at what you have. You look at what is provided. Look laterally and see. And I want to also say, take care of short courses. Short courses are a pathway to you getting what you are looking for. Okay, thank you.
Sounds like you preach. Dennis, are you available? Okay. With the absence of Dennis, the show must go on. So if you're ready, we'll have you. Please give her a round of applause.
Just give me a minute. Or do you want to connect? What are you using? Yeah, please come and connect.
Good morning, everyone. So nice to meet all of you. While they're still trying to figure out the technology side, I'm just gonna introduce myself. My name is Sepiso Hatebe. I am currently with. Okay, cool. I'm currently with Genesis Analytics. We are in economics and impact-based consultancy firm. Based here in Johannesburg. But prior to joining Genesis Analytics, I was a practicing attorney. I was specializing in technology, media, and telecommunications. I figured out that it's not working for me. So I decided to change areas. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to everyone today. And just speaking to what Advocate Nandipa just said, I also at some point when I was doing my LLB was slightly confused. I knew I liked tech law, but the university I was in wasn't offering any tech law courses. So I had to find a way to make it happen. So that's when I got into the LLM program. And then I coupled my IP with cyber law, consumer law, and contract law as well. It's a master's in business law. So I had to couple it with a few things just to get to where I wanted to go. The connection sorted out, Jen. Okay, no problem. Just before we begin this morning, so mine for today is to speak to you guys about, there we are. Thank you. Cool. So mine for today is to speak to you guys about the growing focus on data collection and the associated privacy as well as ethical concerns. I don't mean to put it on a spotlight, but just by a show of hands, how many of us own smartwatches? Smartphones? When you got into the gate this morning, how many of us were asked to present our driver's licenses and the associated car registration? So I think that I'm trying to use that example to actually make everyone see that data collection is something that happens each and every day. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mass data collection, but each and every day we interact with our smartphones, we interact with the smartwatches, we get into special places, we get into hotels, we get asked for ID numbers and everything like that. So there's almost always one way or the other, some form of data collection. And so for today, I just wanted to do a brief introduction on the collection. I wanted to look at the role of technology in data collection,
some emerging data collection trends in South Africa, some ethical considerations in data collection, as well as data privacy and protection. And lastly, to look at some of the practical best practices that we can, in terms of data privacy and data protection. And I just wanted to share some concluding thoughts and maybe have a brief discussion in the room as to what we think the future of data privacy protection and ethical considerations is in terms of data collection. And if I'm too fast, please feel free to tell me, because I know I can be very fast when I speak. So first, we're going to looking at what is the basics of data collection, basically. So when you look at data collection, you're looking at systematic processes of gathering, measuring information on variables of interest in any organized manner. And this information can then be used to analyze and to draw conclusions. And then what are some of the key points to note when you talk about data collection? You're looking at systematic variables in an organized manner and for analysis. Just to speak on some of the basic forms of data collection, we've got surveys, we've got questionnaires, interviews, observations, experiments, documents, analysis. So I think what we can take away from this is that data collection and data analysis go hand in hand, but what they have to do is also take into consideration ethical as well as privacy considerations. So this applies not only to private organizations, not only to government organizations, but to individuals as well. So for instance, we'd say you're studying towards your PhD, you're doing a study, you're bring out in communities, you're making people fill in questionnaires. That's where you have to take into account all of these things. So this is the most basic, I would say the most basic form of data collection. And now what we're looking at is adding the added element of technology in data collection, which I think is where things start to go a bit sideways. The reason why I was asking if we own smartwatches, smartphones, it's because whether we realize or not, every day these devices are collecting data about us. How many times have I gone online to search for shoes? Next thing I see an ad on Facebook about the very same shoes. How many times has my app told me, oh, you didn't do enough steps today? That's what my watch says to me. How are they able to see that? Because they're collecting data in every way. Sometimes we use it to monitor sleep even. So all of those are data points that have been collected about you or different or by using technology. And I think where we are today, the most important and perhaps the most, at the moment, most hyped up technology looking at artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, which is what's embedded within these devices on an everyday basis. So in just looking at some of the use of artificial intelligence within data collection, we're looking at automated data extraction. That's where, for instance, I know maybe some of all of us used large language models like Gemini, ChatGPT to analyze vast amounts of information. For instance, if you're doing a project, I've got all this data. Over the time, I'm trying to be very resourceful. I take the data, I put it on ChatGPT, do this processing data using technology. We have real-time data generation, which we're talking about our devices. The moment I walk, the smartphone in my pocket is calculating my steps. It's data collection. And then we've got remote monitoring as well. And we have seen instances of integration of AI into Internet of Things. It's just a whole lot of complicated technologies, basically. But essentially, it's meant to highlight that this data collection thing is an ongoing process each and every day, especially with the utilization of technology. And so this brings us to some of what we've seen as being the emerging trends in data collection in South Africa. I don't know how many of you are aware, but we had like a couple of months ago, we had Amazon into the South African market. We've got Take-A-Lot. We've got all of these digital services that became much more prominent, especially during COVID-19. Even now, there's nothing more convenient than shopping online. We've got Uber Eats, we've got everything. So we've seen a rise in those sort of digital services, those e-commerce platforms making life convenient. Yet again, collecting data. If I go on there every month I buy a book, chances are I'm going to start getting emails. Hey, this book is out. Hey, this book is out. All that sort of thing. We've got mobile data collections, and we'll do a case study on this in a while. But even our very phones, they collect different types of data on us. Our mobile service providers, MTNs, Vodacoms, collect data. How many people do you call a day? How long are those calls and all those things? We've got public sector data-driven initiatives. And we'll see now, and if you are following policy developments in South Africa and in Africa as a whole, you will see that it's been more and more governments leaning towards data-driven decision-making. Meaning now the government, now more than ever, is collecting different citizens' data for different purposes. Other times is to provide public services. How many people in the area of Johannesburg need water? All of those things. Those are collection of data points that goes to public sector data initiatives. And then we've got again the integration of data of AI and machine learning, which again is what is our everyday use of different technologies. I mean, within our WhatsApps, we now have Meta AI, which is another language model that you utilize whenever you need a quick answer or something like that. But we've also seen a lot, and if you're in the civil society space, we've seen a lot of rise of data activism. Basically, we've got activists, we've got different civil society organizations saying, whoa, but why are you collecting all of this data from citizens? When you go to our case study, you'll see that it becomes important that in as much as we as ordinary citizens might be like, okay, government already has my ID number and everything, but in addition to that, why are they collecting information about my health? There might be certain instances that that's a need for public purposes, public health purposes, but in other times, it becomes a bit excessive and you're like, no, this shouldn't be done, this shouldn't be the case. So just based on these post discussions, I'm sure that for some of us, there are certain privacy alarm bells that are ringing. I don't know if anyone would like to share any. So if government civil servant comes to your door, asks for all this information, what's your first reaction? So if I know exactly why are you collecting my data, and the other one, what are you going to do with it exactly? How long are you going to hold my data for? Once you're done with it, what's going to happen? Who else has access to it? So those are all the ethical, all those privacy considerations for data collection that even though it's within our information regulators purview to be educate the public about it, to a certain extent, the public still doesn't have a lot of knowledge about what can and cannot be done with their data. And so that brings us to our next discussion on what we call ethical considerations in data collection. So as governments, as businesses continue to collect data for most of their business decision-making, most of their government decision-making, we find that a lot of them are not quite transparent in their collection of data. They're not quite accountable for what they're going to do about their data. And it's something that we're going to see as we go along. Sorry. So for ethical considerations in data collection, it speaks to how for certain types of data collection, businesses, individuals, and governments need to take into consideration what the impact is going to be if they continue to collect their data. They're going to need to look at what's the social, ethical, as well as legal implications of collecting that data. So prior to even getting into the domain of saying, okay, we are going to collect the data, these are all the things that they need to consider from an ethical perspective. Secondly, I think we've seen, or if we have not, there's been so many cases where there's been the use of artificial intelligence has turned out to be certain bias. Just on LinkedIn the other day, there was a story about the hiring algorithm that's been kicking people's CVs out of the system. It wasn't until the boss used his own CV to prove that the system is actually doing that, then they actually be able to pick up. Or else it's something that boss was picked up way before the system was actually deployed. So this speaks to the fairness and the bias in all the systems that you use within your company, organization, wherever you are. Even as a data subject, you have the right to question that. Which systems are you using? You have the right to access the type of information from that organization that if you're going to be processing my data, putting it into this model, putting it into this algorithm, what is it doing with it? What are the consequences of all of those things? And then we've got transparency, which is slightly shaky in organizations as well as government. But it is also a requirement because transparency speaks to the organization, that whether it's the government, whether it's the private sector, being transparent about what they do with your data gives you as a data subject the right to say, I need you to tell me right now, what is it you're doing with my data? When are you going to delete it? Why are you holding it if you're still holding it? Then accountability is another one that I think speaks specifically to organizations, to governments, on how they should be able to demonstrate not only to the data subjects, but be able to demonstrate to the information regulator to anybody that actually we are not just doing a tick box exercise with Papia. We're not just ticking off because if we don't, we're going to get fined. But we are doing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 to protect people's data. So that's what accountability speaks to. And then, I mean, what? Sorry. And thank you so much. I think that one of the perhaps most interesting case studies on ethical considerations for data collection has to be over the period of COVID-19. If we remember, everywhere we went, take your temperature, take your name, did you travel outside the country, all of those things, to a point where, yes, because it was a pandemic, our government had to find ways to be able to deal with it. And that one of those ways entailed having initiatives in place that will be able to track people. But then these initiatives require data collection. So what is it? Is that yes, we're under pressure to respond immediately, but then what exactly do these initiatives entail? So this initiative, through government sought to essentially put in place contact tracing mechanisms, and those how they operated is using data, mobile data, to actually determine if you where have you been, and was there somebody who had tested positive for COVID-19, whatever. But there was a situation, and how our government justified it, and how it was justifiable, is that it was in the public interest because we were in the midst of a health pandemic and everything like that. But what became an issue, and I think what raised a lot of red flags in terms of civil society, speaking to peers, speaking to VC, was that we had a lot of concerns, a lot of questions that were never quite answered. And if you've been following, you also see that in terms of our information regulator to this day is still engaging the Department of Health what exactly they did with the data, because they still haven't answered those questions. Did you delete the data? Once you did, who else had access to it? All of these things that we just spoke about, the ethical considerations that are supposed to be in place were not in place. So we had privacy concerns whereby, as citizens, we wanted to know how our data was collected, who had access to it, and beyond that, what are they going to do with it? And also a very important one as well, and we'll touch on it when you do privacy considerations, is informed consent. Because Popea says that a subject, I must give you informed consent for you to collect my data. If I didn't, that's unlawful. It does not meet the conditions set out under Popea. We've got data security. We know that our country is not exactly the best country when it comes to cyber security. I'm so sorry to say, but all of these things, what if government gets hacked? What happens to my data? What happens down the lines for a grandma in the rural areas who just gave her ID number? Suddenly everything is cleared in a bank account. Who's responsible for that? And then also looking at certain social issues like equity and access, because those were, the contact tracing initiative was working via mobile phones. What about communities in rural areas? Those communities, there are people who don't have phones. What about them? And then we're looking at accountability and oversight, which again speaks to the Department of Health and speaks to the mobile phone companies. What happens to my data once all of this is over? Where is it now? Mobile companies providing it to the government. Do you have any security measures in place and everything like that? So for me, I think this is probably one of the best case studies in terms of data collection and privacy considerations that come with it. Okay, and then just my question is that based on what we've discussed, what is your key takeaway on the ethical implications of data collection? Like if somebody were to walk in and say, well, what do you think I want to collect this data this way? What is your thought on it? What are the ethical implications I should consider? Okay, so I'm saying that based on what we've just discussed now, if somebody were to come to you and say, I'm considering doing this project, maybe with kids, maybe with the elderly, I want to collect all this data because I want to see how many people in this area are affected by this. And they say, what do you think I should consider first from an ethical perspective? What is it maybe that you would emphasize on?
What would you emphasize?
Good morning, everyone. In the city, I'm from YEM. I would say safety because I think it's the core of everything actually. Because now I'm be saying now if I want to collect data, yeah, the data that I'm collecting is still not yet safe. What is the purpose of me creating the particular data if I cannot protect it? Thank you.
Maybe just also online.
Well, let's see, the first things first, you have to consider how much data you're going to collect, how secure can you make it, and what sort of encryption are you going to use to actually secure that data, because now data breaches are very easy. And a source of phishing comes in a form of a link. So while collecting information, somebody poses up as you and sends a link. What happens next?
It's a very good one.
Online. Remote hub in Soweto.
I think for me, what's important, he has just said it, that breach is easy. But let me tell you something. Whatever safety you're talking about, in an infrastructure that you don't know, you're joking. I always say when I'm supervising students and I'm doing evaluation, there's a form toggle that says I must actually say I will keep the information safe. I say I don't keep it because this thing is not mine. And whatever is happening here is known by the manufacturer. I'm saying let's be serious. The seriousness is starting with the infrastructure before you talk about all the things that we're talking about. For now, we're joking.
Soweto.
Nothing there.
Go Hype.
CEO is here. Do you want to?
Hi.
Yes, go ahead, Dennis.
Hi, everyone. Just to expand also on what Advocate Nzalib was saying, with regards to keeping information, I remember with this ethics thingy, with research, because she's my supervisor, as most of you guys know, doing my LLM. It was a debate about who keeps data and the form of keeping data. And there was a huge debate. It was me, her, and two other seniors. And as well as the gentleman mentioned, the phishing attacks. We've picked up that, especially in the legal fraternity, you get certain emails from scammers posing as banks. I think the case in point was ENS. Said, please assist there. I stand to be corrected. Adrian Nathan's one of the biggest law firms in South Africa, arguably even in Africa. So the scammers sent an email. They clicked on the email. Client lost money. I think it was a conveyancing matter. Took them to court, but client eventually won the matter because ENS was claiming that they were claiming no fault. So it's a conversation that shouldn't be paid lip service. And like counsel is saying, more needs to be done about it.
Okay. He said, yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. And I absolutely agree with each and every one of your key takeaways. But just before we move on, I just wanted to also emphasize the element of informed consent. Because so many times we sign up for so many things, we just tick, we never read any terms and conditions. And all of these things somehow, and to a great extent, the end of the line, they count against us. So for things like data collection, where you're doing global basic studies and everything like that, it becomes quite important that the people you interact with always have an idea. Take your time to explain before they actually give their consent to say, I'm collecting 1, 2, 3 because I need it for 1, 2, 3. Will you agree? Give them that option. And we'll see that as we go through the legal framework that the PIs actually comes from our constitution, which gives everyone the right to privacy, which means that everyone has the right to safeguard their information. So if you come to me looking for my information, you have to tell me. I have to make that informed decision to say, yes, you can go ahead to make my bid. That's just one point I just wanted to emphasize. But thank you so much, everyone. Those are very valid takeaways when it comes to that. And then the next, we're looking at now the legal implications of data collection. And here I have perhaps what I regard as being the primary acts in South Africa that speaks to data collection and some of its legal implications. I did not want to bore you guys by going into very detail on each of the different sections. So I just give you a highlight on how each of these acts actually impact data collection. So we've got the Constitution again, which safeguards people's right to privacy, meaning my information is mine. You have to give me a reason why you want it. You must not invade my privacy by taking my information, collecting my data without telling me why. Second, you've got the POPI Act, which I think is central to data collection, sharing, using, where the information is identifiable or de-identified. So it's arguably the most important, and you'll see, I think, pretty much everywhere you go now. It's POPIA in varsity, POPIA in banks, POPIA everywhere you go. This is how we'll process your information, because POPIA requires everyone to tell you what are you doing, what they're doing with your information. And then we've got the Electronic Communications and Transactions Act, which speaks again to data retention and production of certain standards when it comes to data protection. We've got the Cyber Crimes Act, which is also a very important piece of legislation that is central to regulating unlawful interceptions of data, hacking. And the fact that this is an act that's meant to address all of those issues, meant to ensure that those issues get their day in court, and in court people are convicted for unlawfully intercepting data, hacking, all of those things. And then we've got the Consumer Protection Act, whose primary purpose for is to safeguard consumers' data, consumers' privacy, and protection. And it's a very important act, especially in terms of e-commerce platforms, in terms of transactions we enter into where they collect our data. It's the act that says don't bombard your consumer with your emails, don't oversell the products to your consumer. So this act is meant to serve that. So there's so many more policies, so many more acts that have relevance as well to data collection, but I think these 5 are the crux of data privacy implications in terms of data collection in South Africa. And so, some of you have already mentioned on data security. So basically, all of these are what are required by POPIA and the other key acts. Data privacy and consent, we've spoken to it. It must be informed, it must be explicit. Don't try and infer my consent from based on a conversation where the other day I must explicitly say, yes, you can process my data, you can collect my data. Data security and protection, a very important one as well. Another very important one is data quality and accuracy. So the data you collect must be high quality, it must be accurate. And all of these things are things that are required by POPIA. This means that your data must be reliable, because remember that governments, businesses are collecting all of this data because they want to make decisions. So what happens if you have data that's inaccurate? What happens if your data is of a very low quality that impacts the whole decision making that's behind the data collection? And then you've got another very important one being data retention and deletion. So certain statutes like POPIA, certain other, I think the National Archives Act, they're explicit as to how long you can keep the data. So if I collect data, I can't keep it for an indefinite period unless it's allowed by a certain act. Have to keep. If I'm collecting your data now, I'm keeping it for 5 years. For example, if you're in varsity, they'll be like, okay, post-graduation will only keep your email address active until maybe for 6 months afterwards, the system, you're gone. It goes like that are required, because what happens if you get somebody who hacks your system and you find that you've got data from 20 years ago? Information regulators is going to ask you, what are you still doing with this data? And then that becomes a fine. Sorry, yes. Hi.
And okay, hi. My name is Malwande. And I had an argument, not an argument, but there was a situation that happened from an academic perspective where you find that a lot of data, for example, in upmarket universities has not been updated to reflect, for example, stuff that happened in the African continent. So I was currently a PhD student who was studying something along the lines of African history, etc., etc. However, a lot of what he was studying was inaccurate because the people who had collected the data were colonists, and everything that was written down and had been uploaded so that he could do the chat GPT, all of that literally reflected something that was inaccurate, and he was going to present that and get a PhD as an African, as a whatever. So my thing is, I hear you, right? I really hear the whole story. However, we also have to understand that we went into a new world in English. We have not gone into this world in our own languages. We have not gone into this new world actually with the linguistics in mind. So all the everything that has been uploaded onto the internet, on Google, you name it, is actually still written by not me, not anyone else. So I don't really think that's accurate in itself. Okay, that's number one. The second thing, COVID, right? We have to understand that COVID is not a normal state, right? That could be defined as martial law, right? Type of martial law state. When you go into a martial law state, you actually have to collapse the constitution, certain aspects of the constitution, because you limit the right, because you can justify it. There's an illness, it's an outbreak, it could even be a war. And at that point in time, you've got to understand that certain decisions have to be made. Your rights, unfortunately, will be limited. So you cannot use Popia, unfortunately. You will not be able to use that. That was never explained to people. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that we've moved into this new world, which sound nice, right? Like I promise you, in English, they are perfect. In the West, they work. They just don't speak to Black people at all. Like they don't speak to their core. They don't speak to anything that Black people are going through. So I don't know what needs to happen, who needs to say what or where or what, but I really think that a lot of the stuff that is here, we have to go back to first principles first. And then correct a lot of the information so that whatever it is that we upload is accurate. Because now you've got a lot of PhDs running around talking rubbish, And what do we do? Because the guy's got a PhD next to his name, and we're supposed to bring him and he's supposed to talk about, the future of the world, whatever the story is. I'm not bashing. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just presenting the facts as they are. That without us walking into this, holistically and understanding, we actually we're not doing anything. We're just literally just paying lip service, and that's what it is. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel.
No, absolutely. I absolutely understand how you feel. And just start on the whole Popia issue on COVID-19. That's a perfectly understandable thing. And I think Popia does make certain exceptions for circumstances like that there'll be instances whereby the collection is justifiable because of public health. There's a certain ministry has to perform their public duties. There are different exceptions within Popia that cater for certain situations like COVID-19 and everything like that. But Africa, I'll share with you that I recently read a very quite interesting paper, and I can share it when I share the slides with Solo, but it speaks to, like you're speaking about, data collection in Africa, the scarcity of African data, and how some of these English or large language models that were designed or created in the US, created in the EU, were all trained based on that data. So African data is not within any of those large language models. That's why you have an issue when it comes to researching certain African or accessing certain African data. I'll give an instance. I recently worked on a country where I had to look for data, and so we had in-country consultations to be able to get any usable data about that country. So on that aspect, I really quite agree with you. There's a lot on issues around data collection and data access in Africa. And I think that from an African regional perspective, we've been seeing movement in attempts to actually try and remedy that. We've got the AU data policy framework that's aimed at doing exactly that. We're trying to have this cross-border data flows within Africa to make sure that our data is accurate and all of those things. It's quite an interesting policy, and I'll share it with you as well to see what maybe your take on it is. I'll share my email address at the end, and if you still want to take that a bit further, then you're more than welcome to email me. And okay, no problem. Thank you so much for that. And the next is just looking at some of the what we call practical best practices when it comes to data collection. And interestingly enough, you'll find that, like I have been saying, that with many organizations, both public and private, we've come to treat data collection, privacy, protection, and all those things as a mere checkbox exercise, where else it's not. It's an ongoing process because, like you said, we have different technologies that are being introduced every day. We never thought in my work, I'll use Copilot, I'll use Gemini, or I'll use ChatGPT. All of these situations have to constantly be catered for as the organization grows, as the government grows. We've been seeing some of the governments, for example, the government of Mauritius coming out with a framework of how exactly to use AI within the public sector, and all of these things. So it becomes very important that there are always these mechanisms in place, not just, okay, we've complied with POPIA, we have a privacy policy check, we've got a prior policy check. It's all about these things that really need to be implemented on a daily basis to ensure that this data collection is always up, especially speaking to data accuracy. I mean, if I'm going to be using certain data to make decisions about a certain area of South Africa, I can't always use last year's data or 10 years data to make a decision about now, meaning I all constantly have to have that data accuracy at the back of my head to say, every now and again, our tech team, is our data still to up to standards, is still accurate? Can we make decisions based on this data? So it becomes very important. So again, we've got data collection and storage, which speaks to a lot of things, including defining why do we need the data. We implement what we call data minimization, meaning we'll collect as minimal data as we can to make our decision. We don't have to collect data about you, your date of birth, your date of all of these things. You went to varsity when we just need one thing from you. We need to know your age. We don't need all of these things just for you to tell me I'm this year, many years old. We've got also data anonymization, which is a very important one as well, a very critical privacy tool to anonymize data where you can. And then we've got secure data storage, which is very, very important. And I think that the greatest investments perhaps organizations can make is in their data security. That's where they would spend money without spending any expenses. And then you also have regular data audits where you can, like I said, auditing your data to see if it's still relevant, accurate, and all these things. And then you've also, within certain organizations, need to build this culture of data security where you need to have training programs, clear communication, and all of these things. And you also need to be able to encourage reporting with employees, encourage reporting with peers and everything like that. And then you also put in place certain things like your data management tools. You have your compliance tools, your incident response tools, which are very important as well. I think we've seen over the past couple of months that the information regulators now really, really serious. They knock at your door, they be like, show me privacy impact assessment. You now utilizing this tool to hire people. Where's your impact assessment to show that your tool is not biased, that your data is still up to date, and all of those things. So these are all the that essentially organizations should have within them just to make sure that from a data collection, their privacy and ethical implications are completely addressed. And now just some concluding and sort of parting thoughts. Just think about and taking the way forward, taking the thought process forward. We need again to look at and revisit the issue of data quality and bias mitigation. With these tools, we've seen tools that are built with data from the ways they tend to have a lot of bias issues. And if you read closely, you come across it, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's a news report, Amazon's hiring tool has gone haywire, these things have gone haywire. There's all these things that are very important to always keep in mind, as well as addressing certain ethical and privacy risks that comes with emerging technologies. AI is very beautiful, but it has so many risks as well. I mean, if you've had the opportunity to consider the EU AI Act, you'll see that they take it very seriously, that they're ranking their risks to say there are tools that are a no-go. There are tools that are a go, but under very strict circumstances. So it's all of these things that are actually meant to address all of these privacy and ethical applications in emerging technologies. And again, you have to look beyond COVID-19. What if in the next 10 years we have another COVID-19 similar situation? How are we going to do the collection differently? How are we going to, what lessons did we take away from that and all these things? And then also looking at future trends, and it becomes very important to consider within data governance, what are your mechanisms to respond to all of these things? Most importantly, and I think it's a very passionate area of mine, is citizen involvement. I personally do not think there's enough education around the privacy, data, ethical implications of data privacy. Each and every day, people are told there is POPIA, which is meant to protect your privacy, but beyond that, there's nothing else they know. When does POPIA apply? When does not apply? What rights do I have? Because we have rights under POPIA, rights that are enforceable. You can either enforce it against the person with your data, or just go straight to the information regulator and lay a complaint. So it's all of these things that I think that's why it's an area of passion for me, because I need people to understand as much as they can in their own language, which is also a very important thing. You can also not just communicate in English, but in our own African languages, what POPIA means, what does it mean, what do the rights under POPIA mean for me? How do I exercise those rights? Help me understand, help me make informed decisions about my data. And that I will open the floor for questions.
Am I audible? Okay, good morning once more, everybody. So I was actually, even though it's been highlighted just a bit by the speaker, but my question is, as when it comes to data once more, we have been using social media for far too long here, especially us in South Africa, because South Africans are more of consumers than, manufacturers. And the biggest problem is that we post content that is somehow inaccurate. Certain things are very accurate, but normally, as we can see according to the stats, what we post online. But the concern is now, when it comes to this that we're talking about, which is data protection and everything that we're actually doing, it boils back to human rights. Because now there are, if I may be, I don't want to be biased or something. It sounds like a human right violation whereby you cannot personally be hired simply because of a picture or a statement that you once said 20 years ago. And which goes back to now a vast, huge impact of unemployment. And I love the lady who just spoke saying we cannot use data of back then to now, because now, as we speak, companies are still using that data of 20 years back or statement on Facebook or WhatsApp that you used 20 years back to actually make you such of a bad person even today, which is somehow unfair and wrong. And you just also spoke about impact assessment too. So companies are not using that, but they're actually using your old data. They actually condemn you, your current economic state right now. So that also, in my personal opinion, needs to be fixed, and it's somehow, in fact, not even fixed, it's scrapped, so that everything may start all over again. And number two, it comes back to the regulation, the regulatory side of things, whereby we're not the one who are controlling this. So technically, our voices are either less or unheard at all. But we are not really the ones actually who make decisions. We are just there to make beautiful statements, but the decision makers are not really us. We're just looking at things from the window perspective and hearing what the decision makers are saying in the inside. And especially coming back to the weekend part of things, whereby we are hearing things of the West, but the West are not hearing things of the South or the African people, whereby your voice or this whole policy and regulatory measures and data protection act are actually being biased and secluded. So technically, some of our information, they're actually being stolen or taken and then being monetized, which is somehow an illegal act. And we're not really looking into that. So somehow as well, the POPIA Act is almost non-effective when it comes to these degrees, because now still it's an information, whether, I mean, the word data means information. So it's still somehow not protecting or not even accurate enough to actually deal with the issues that we are talking about right now.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tabane. First of all, I just want to say it is such a great pleasure to sit here in front of all of you. We are learning a lot. I want to know, as someone who comes from under-resourced communities such as Soweto and wants to share this information with individuals that are unable to access this kind of events or are unable to get this information, is there any resources on how to protect themselves from phishing attacks and misinformation?
Okay. First things first, I want to start with trying to answer her question, whereby I repeat again, the internet has everything. We just don't know how to ask the internet. But then again, my biggest concern was that it's only like 2% of the world which keeps our data safe. AI also plays a role in redistributing our data, and some people are using AI to take data and resell it to the scammers. Our data can be resold at times, more especially from the games we're playing or whatever apps we're using. Our data tends to be resold. But now, I also did a bit of my own research, and yes, cyber attacks on South Africa are increasing. But now the only problem is, instead of us being offered the right thing, and as the lady that said did say again, is to say what you guys are saying, it's totally okay, not in a disrespectful manner, but it's totally irrelevant because I'm a 19-year-old, and if you guys know what a white hat hacker is, that's what I am, whereby I protect my own data. You get me? But now the only problem is that the adults here in the room don't even know how simple it is for them to be scammed off the Wi-Fi that's actually open here in this hotel. So everybody's connecting to this Wi-Fi. It only takes me to connect to the Wi-Fi for me to actually get everybody here's information. So why is it that we are not being taught on that? Why is it that it's actually being delayed? Why is it that the youth in South Africa is never heard when we're speaking of stuff like this? Because now, if we have to start debating about the politics, well, I'm telling you, everyone here will stand up. But now we go back to the cyber things, the technological realm. Our digital identities are already compromised. Everyone here is already compromised simply because of one small mistake, no encryption, in which it's something they're not giving everyone's employees. If you guys understand what I'm trying to say, there's not much technological training for adults, especially within the workforce. That's why there's so much phishing attempts, these different types of scams. And if you guys notice, Play Store is making us pay for apps that can actually protect us. Why are we actually paying for apps that are outside to protect us here in South Africa? Why don't we have people making antiviruses here in South Africa that do not allow malware?
No, that's very Hi, my name. Oh, okay. Oh, should I carry on? Yes. Oh, okay. So, my name is Jennifer. I really, really loved your presentation because it spoke to quite a lot of things that I've already done within my organization. So, when the POPIA Act actually came out, there was quite a lot of things that we needed to implement from an organization perspective. So you talked about quite a lot of things like anonymization. It's things that we needed to implement, ensuring that we've got consent, defining retention periods for certain type of data. But my one big question is that who is responsible for ensuring that companies or organizations actually comply with the POPI Act? Because for us internally, within my organization, obviously there's quite a lot of like orders that are currently being completed so that we ensure that we comply to certain legislations and ensure that our systems comply with a lot of legislations. I think one thing Umama mentioned is that when you drive into the hotel, they basically collect your data. And my biggest concern is that are there any policies that come in that say, they're not supposed to actually collect data? Because I even asked, why do you want my cell phone number? Why do you want my driver's license? What are you going to do? Because I think of late, I've been getting quite a lot of calls from all over, and you ask yourself, where did these people actually get my um my data? Because for me, from an organization point of view, before we actually even process, we even have to have like processing agreements within processing agreements for basically just any data that is basically filtered through from either if it's a customer or whether it's an outside organization. So I just want to understand what is currently being done in terms of making sure that companies basically comply, because I feel like a lot of companies actually sell people's data. Yeah, and it's not basically regulated in that sense. And yeah, I just wanted to find out what is being done about that. I have a question. Okay. I just wanted to ask what happens if that is not selected at all? Will it be taken by force, or I just want to know what happens?
DUT, you can then ask the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Morning, everyone. My name is Mandla Senkosi. I have one or two questions. I wanted to know, how does the Internet Society and its collaborators intend to tackle the connectivity challenges that many small businesses and learners face in rural areas? And the second part of my question, I got worried from day one of this program, and then since yesterday and today, about how do we protect our information or our personal information from other stakeholders who do not have the best interest of any kind of information, or do not have the best interest for our information itself, for example. And also, how do we protect ourselves from intents that may not be good for us? For example, how do we protect ourselves from the so-called colonization of the mind and information in regard to the influx of information and the internet use? So even if we promote societies and organizations to be involved in distributing a lot of internet use, or implementing stages of using the internet in deep rural areas, but how do we protect the culture that existed in those smaller communities in deep rural areas, or in societies in Soweto, for example, or Wanangoma, or where else? How do we still make sure within our societies that we retain our true self and not be overtaken by the culture of internet use and forget ourselves in the process? Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Oh, yeah, no. Okay. Okay, no problem. It's very nice to meet a white hat hack. I've never met one before. It's very interesting. But maybe I'll just start on this side of the room. So, according to Popia and where we are at the moment, the information regulator is the main entity that's responsible for Popia and higher compliance as well. They've issued a couple of guidance notes. We have regulations, but we also need to take into account, I think, at least that's how I reason it, that also their capacity, their budgetary constraints, they still are fairly new institutions. But what we've seen is that if they decide it's your day, it's your day. So you need to always make sure that your house is in order. If it's not, then it's either a fine, and then it's like a fine has a lot of other implications, including brand reputation is ruined and all of these things if you are found to not have been compliant with Popia. And two, I also think that with things like Popia, data privacy, cybersecurity, those are not necessarily issues that we should maybe put aside and say we have deeper issues to deal with, like connectivity in deep rural areas, access to resources for people in communities in Soweto. I, for instance, come from a very small town in KZN where most of the population still doesn't have access to the internet. People still have no idea how to use a computer. But we're talking about Popia, AI, advanced data connection, advanced data processing, and all of those things. But that's the reality of South Africa. And like my brother said, if we get into the politics of it all, it's going to be a very, very long day. But I think that what I sometimes console myself with is that South Africa is still a developing country. But that does not necessarily mean we should now fall behind all the other global developments, that we shouldn't have a data protection policy or acts in place, that we should basically now neglect all that whole 4IR situation because we still have communities that don't even have water or don't have access to adequate infrastructure. So I think I somehow see it as, okay, we have past issues, we have deeper issues like connectivity to deal with. But at the same time, we must not make sure that our country is not globally competitive, because to attract foreign investments in technology, you have to have these policies that are conducive. You have to ensure company from the EU, we have the GDPR, which is like a super strict data privacy. They come to South Africa, they'll be like, okay, cool, I'm going to set up shop here. they need to be comfortable that there is, in addition to GDPR, POPIA, that will ensure that the data is protected. And in terms of data collection and what happens without it, I wouldn't know what would happen without this data collection, because so many functions and there's so much reliance on this data, because I believe that data helps us understand the world around us. Right now, our governments, not only our South African government, but Africa as a continent globally, people are prioritizing this digital economy. And what drives that is data. Governments are becoming increasingly data driven, and what's driving that again is being able to collect data. What I think should be opportunities, or where we can bring out our voice as the youth, is making sure that we're not left behind on that. Because essentially what's going on is that, interestingly, Africa has perhaps some of the youngest populations in the world. Meaning the decisions that are being made by leaders in our day will affect us in future, will affect the future generations. Which means if they're discussing POPIA regulations, data privacy, cybersecurity, we should be at the table. Which is where I think multi-stakeholder organizations like this one come into play. They've got different ideas. Connectivity, cybersecurity, protecting ourselves, making sure resources are available, and advocating for possibly the inclusion of digital education, digital literacy as part of our basic education curriculum. Let kids in primary school learn about the importance of data privacy. Let people in high school learn how to protect their information. Teach them cybersecurity, teach them all of these things. So it's all of those things that I believe we should advocate for. But as a country, we're still developing, but I also think it's very important that we try and at least remain globally competitive in that sense, in terms of technology and everything like that. We're not perfect, but we're getting there. So yeah, that's just my take on all of these things. But thank you so much for the wonderful questions. And yeah, the Internet Society one, I think I'll hand over to their app. But yeah, I'm not sure if you'll still be able to see my email address, but I'm more than happy to share it. And you can find me on LinkedIn. That's episode. Thank you so much. Yeah, H, whatever with an H. Thank you so much, everyone.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Can we please give her another round of applause? I think she will share her email address. She's sitting right here during tea time. You can also just engage with her further, get some more information. I'm going to introduce the next speaker. So we skipped Ndata Dennis, but just to stick to the program, we swapped him around with Tepiso. So he will be going in on Tepiso's place, right? But our next speaker is also here to speak to the entrepreneurs in the room. She is a cybersecurity lead at ISSAC. And she will be here just to talk to us about cybersecurity and business responsibilities. I think maybe she'll address just some of the questions around who is responsible for ensuring that data is safe in an organization. I'd like to call Mubile Mihlangu. Can you please give her a round of applause? Your presentation is. Right.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I think it's still morning. Hey. Hope everyone is doing well. As Tulu mentioned, my name is Mobile Mahlangu, and I am the cybersecurity business engagement lead at ISSAC. So this morning, just gonna spend some time just discussing cybersecurity and business responsibilities, really focusing on the role that business is in safeguarding the digital assets, as well as the responsibilities that they have towards their various stakeholders, customers, as well as employees as well. So just to start us off, I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. And just to start us off, I'm going to tell a bit of a story. As the TikTokers say, it's a story time. So a few months ago, I received this WhatsApp from my friend's sister. And she is telling me how she's going through the most and she's having an absolute terrible day. Can I please send her 3,000 Rand? So I'm just like, okay, girl, we haven't spoken in a while. The first what I firstly do is I pick up the phone and I try and call her, but her phone goes to voicemail. So immediately, because I'm woke, I'm like, no, something's off. So I give my friend a call, and indeed, she had been a victim of the SIM swap scam. Has anyone in the room been a victim? Oh no, what happened? You want to tell us a little bit what happened?
So it was in December, right? Okay, my name is Matapelo, sorry. It was in December, and then just round about Christmas, we're in Pumalanga for a holiday. And then I get a call on our group chat, their family. So people had got my message. I don't know how, but I'm in need of 1,000 rand. So I've been asking 1,000 rand from. So it happened that I last year it's a SIM swap. Kilaklile phone. And then it's a SIM swap. So I don't know Nje, what happened. But eventually somebody thought that it can be me. And then they were able to reach me. And then that is not me. I'm not literally from anyone. Yes.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. So I think it shows us that, this thing can impact anyone. So one of the things is when you do receive messages like that, definitely look out for the red flags. But also more importantly, look out for all these links. Promise you heaven and earth, and then you click them, and next thing you are compromised. What's been particularly interesting, okay? Okay, cool. Thank you. What the data actually shows us is that the average loss per SIM swap incident, according to data, is 17,000. So people actually send money, because now imagine your mother sending you this message and is saying, look, send money now. I need it. You'll get it tomorrow. I always say to people, Paul, hear the person's voice before you send out money. Another story, 2016. I'm sitting in my house, minding my own business, and then I start receiving all these SMSs that I am shopping. But meanwhile, I'm sitting in my house. I quickly check my card. My card is in the bag. So this type of scam is called the card in hand scam. So what threat actors need, all they need is your card number or your card details, and they're able to shop online. And this really goes back to some of the data breach conversations. But before I get into that, the impact or the rand value of that particular scam, data shows us that there's an average loss of over 800 million that is lost to this particular scam. So what to do if you are a victim of the scam? You need to immediately call and block your card. But from a business perspective, if for instance, for banks in particular, so because I work for a bank, I'm privy to some of this information. We actually actively hunt for credit card details that are available on the dark web, and we take that down. And that is a responsibility that we take on as a bank to ensure that our customers are safe. So even when you are shopping online with your card, it's not all the banks, but I know some banks offer things like virtual cards and so forth. Rather use that than your actual credit card details. So just in terms of data breaches, so this is directly linked to the two stories I've shared now. Data breaches are on a constant rise in South Africa. We see how we see this on the headlines ever so often. I think the recent one was on was it CIPC, which impacted data from business owners. So you can imagine how much data is out there, how much of the data is out there that the hackers are using. And some people, what some of these threat actors then do is actually use this data for social engineering. So they come back to you with your own data to fill in the blanks so that they can further scam you. So we need to really be concerned with who has our data. And in cases where companies have experienced data breaches, we need to be invested in understanding what are they doing to rectify or to mitigate that particular issue. Now, back as a business owner, let's have a look at some of the numbers. So the figures for some of the data breaches that have taken place in South Africa, they go up to an average cost of about 36 million. That is a lot of money for a business to lose. And it really brings me to my next point of asking, is cybersecurity a business risk or is it an IT problem? Does anyone want to take a stab at that and maybe give me a why?
I think from 5 years back, 2017, cybersecurity was identified as a strategic, not just a business risk, is a strategic corporate risk because it cuts across all your support plans, whether you talk HR, whether you talk ICT, whether you talk logistics. So it's a strategic corporate risk that must be analyzed. And the source of it, most of the time, like you said, it's human. That's why you train humans. I won't finish it.
Thank you. Yeah, this is also a comment at the back.
All right. I also think it also comes back to the technology part of things. Whether we form part to scam or to protect. Because I've also noticed that a few months back, I studied data communication / falling under IT, whereby to answer your question in this form that when you're online, literally, if you are online right now, nothing is technically protected. Your PIN doesn't matter. It doesn't exist anymore up until you switch your phone off. So it's not a part of the risk matter that you may put either on IT or cybersecurity, but it's the technology part of things, which by all of these things, they are formed by humans. So it goes back to us once again, where it's us humans when we do these things, what do we use them for? And also the technology part of things is also playing a crucial role in either protecting not just data, but human as a whole and his information, or either scamming them. That's how I also found out. And having done so, I'm aware of how data or any form of transactions can be made due to the network infrastructure around all things. The technical part of those things, we call them topology, which means infrastructure in a simple terminology, which also boils back to the education part of things. Whereby if I say to you topology, nobody would understand except those who would relate in terms of such. You must get me. So that's how easily vulnerable then we become in terms of such conversations that we become. Hence, the lady spoke about people asking for money. But to me, it happened some couple of years back that I think it was a Nigerian guy or something. He actually came on my WhatsApp and then he decided to say something that he thought he's talking to just a kid around the block, whereby when you type on top of your friend's message, it's on WhatsApp. So it would be written you, and then the other person would be notified that it's him. So he was claiming that I was at the airport, something like that, getting my ticket. And I'm like, if I knew that I was the airport, you wouldn't remind me on my WhatsApp that I was at the airport and forgot something. That's no way. And that's how I knew and wanted to be so eager to find out how these things are. Currently, it's technology. And it's either we make it a priority to stiffen and tighten things, or we just actually let it go and we become too vulnerable to such things. So my take is that the education part of things is much, much more crucial. And it includes everybody, either qualified or unqualified, but you need to be protected. Number one, as long as you have an email, you just know, okay, you're part of the whole fish in the sea. If you have a phone number, you're just part of the whole fish in the sea. If you have a bank card, you're just part of the fish in the sea. So we can name them all. Your names are just part and parcel of the fish in the sea. But I don't want to go any further. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you so much.
I'll be quick. I believe it's a business problem, and also it's a matter of ethics. If as a nation globally, if we can be people of good ethics, you wouldn't be facing this challenge. Also, posing to your previous question, I also experienced such whereby there was a funeral at home, but then the company that was supposed to pay out the money, they were late. So we ended up taking out loans. We ended up paying from our own savings for the whole funeral program. Then when it paid after, one of the people inside the company that is paying the man said, yeah, the money is out. It's going to be in your bank account. Indeed, that was true. Only to realize they work with Muslims. So these people, they carry something small like this, exactly like this, Coca-Cola lid. And then it has 10 cents inside. There's 10 cents inside and a green Vaseline. Then somebody will come and just push you. And then they touch you. Upon touching you, they tell everything about you. Or in the account, you have 50,000 rands right now. And then you have savings of 80,000 rands. You have investments, you have this, you have this, you have that, just by touching you. And then that is techno cyber, witchcraft level 1000. I'm telling you. And then if you are the Holy Spirit was within you, if you could see, they kill you because you are a threat. They kill you. But they work with the police even. They work with insurance companies. So also I realized in life you must not have a lot of money that comes with you. No, be broke. If you have money, you have 500 rand. But these people are too smart. I'm telling you, they're too smart. Upon further investigation, when you ask God, why did you allow this to happen? They'll tell you, right, if he didn't, they were going to kill you, these people. They work with high-ranking people. It's like it's a sea. You're dropped in an ocean.
Sure.
So these people, they work too smart. So it's a matter of ethics. We've made crime to be normalized in South Africa. If we can have the government and civil society being strong on time, these things can end.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for your contribution. Yes, Tulu said, I think that's next. It's beyond technology now. Next level. But thanks for your contribution, everyone. I think we'll unpack. We're going to spend some time just unpacking this question. And I really put two of these pictures here because of some of the perceptions we have in general, where people think business are people who are closing the deals. They're the ones that are bringing in the money. And oftentimes when you mention things like cybersecurity, it is seen more as a blocker until then everybody wants to find that guy or that lady who is sitting in the cybersecurity. And it shouldn't really be that way. Let's understand why. Okay, so without assuming that everybody understands, what cybersecurity is about, I'm going to just use an analogy, a house analogy, just to bring it home a bit. So in your home, you invest in quite a lot of security, ensuring that you've got a perimeter fencing or wall around your house, ensuring that you've got you've got doors and windows which are closed. In fact, every day before you go to sleep, you go and just double check that you've locked the door. You ensure that you've got an alarm system in some instances. In some instances, you go a step further and invest in a home that is in a security estate, which has added security with manned security guards walking around with cameras and so forth. And over and above all of that, you even have insurance. So if all else fails, insurance can kick in and help you recover. And another thing that you also do, as you bring up your kids, you also start teaching them to be aware of surroundings. You teach them, again, before you sleep, make sure you've locked the door. When you're driving with them around the on the roads as well, you say, make sure you don't you have your windows up, things like that. Those are general security measures that we do on a daily. But interestingly enough, we walk into our businesses, we walk into organizations, and we assume, oh, IT will sort that out, or the cybersecurity department will sort that out. That's not true. It's the same as how you manage your security in your home. So in this analogy, I've done some comparisons to say, your Windows could potentially act as things like antivirus or malware protection. Things like your alarm system would work as your detection function. So in the cybersecurity space, we've got a detection function which will alert you if there's any potential breaches that are coming through. We also have things like multi-factor authentication or encryption or passwords, which could work as doors. So before you enter, maybe you've got a security guard and a door. That's a multi-factor authentication in a way. You've got that fence around your house, so that could represent your external firewall as well as encryption. And then mailbox. I don't know if anyone still receives mails, but for the purposes of this example, it could serve as your email security. We work with emails on a daily basis. So how do we ensure that we're scanning your emails to make sure that they don't contain malware, with the links that are coming through, are not malicious? And if you do click on that link, is there another control in place to help protect you from that? And lastly, insurance. Did you guys know that there's cyber insurance, like insurance that is specific to cyber? It's in the billions. So you cover yourself like in the billions. Because as you can imagine, well, I suppose it would depend on your on the size of the organization, but also they come in and they basically assess how secure are you. So what controls you have in place. So the better controls you have in place, the less your premiums are. Yeah. Okay. So why is cybersecurity important in business? I think we've touched on quite a bit, but if we look at some of the facts, every 39 seconds, there's a cyber attack somewhere in the world that's taking place. So if you're not secure, you're in trouble. The cybersecurity market is predicted to reach up to 533 billion by 2032. So for the threat actors, it's quite a lucrative business for them. But who are they getting the money from? From you as the business. And then over 75% of the cyber attacks start with a scam email. So that long lost uncle that you don't know but has left you all his millions, and if you just click on that link, then you're a millionaire. That uncle is going to bring problems in your life. Be careful of those uncles. Who's impacted by these cyber attacks? I think we've established, I've listed from an industry-wide how cyber attacks impact the different industries. However, what we have established is that it's not just industries or big corporates that get impacted. We can be potentially impacted at an individual level, like a personal WhatsApp. You know, that's how you could get impacted. Some further facts. So around 1 million passwords are stolen every month. 55 people use the same passwords on all platforms. So if they steal your password as part of those 1 million, and you've used this one password across all your platforms, you're in big trouble. So password hygiene is very important. Then I spoke about cyber insurance. From a business perspective, it seems only 26% of businesses have cyber insurance. So what tends to happen is this has crippled businesses, in fact, where when it comes to things like ransomware attacks, because now they've locked you out and they say you have to pay this money. You don't have the money to pay these threat actors. So you're now forced in a corner to play into the hands of the threat actors. So why is security measures important for business? Well, it'll help us secure data from theft. It'll prevent financial losses. It'll avoid legal liabilities for data breaches. It'll protect the reputation of your business. And lastly, it will help fight against the rise in cybercrime. So still looking at the threat landscape, I think the cybersecurity landscape it's one that's rapidly evolving. You know, 1 minute we're talking about this particular technology, next minute there's a whole new threat vector in place. So some of the security trends that I'd just like to share with you, these are some of the top ones being mentioned in 2024. Starting with zero-day exploits. So these are exploits which are security vulnerabilities or security flaws in the system where business hasn't had an opportunity to find a solution or a patch for it. But threat actors are already starting to exploit it. So this is something that it would fall under I would say vulnerability management, where you need to be quite aware. You need to be aware what is in the system, what is aware, what you be aware of what vulnerabilities are out there, but also have processes of how you actually manage these vulnerabilities. So for instance, if you identify you've got a zero-day vulnerability that might be impacting your organization, having things like segregating your network might be a potential solution at that time until you find a fix for the infected component. Another thing that's on the rise is artificial intelligence. It's quite a buzzword. I think when ChatGPT came out, that's when everybody, I think a lot of people still call it, they say ChatGPT while referring to AI, you know. So that's rising quite a bit, and I know we've had a number of conversation or comments around phishing attacks. So previously we would give training and say things like, you know, when you receive an email, look out for things like mistakes. With AI, they give you proper English, and it's a bit difficult to pick up some of those red flags. What the good news is we can actually use AI for our defenses as well. There's a whole field around AI fighting AI. Quantum computing. This is something at a point was, referred to as emerging. Some people still do refer to it as emerging. So what quantum computing says is that all our cryptography algorithms as we know them today, but when the quantum computer becomes commercialized, what we know today will be null and void. So you can imagine the impact this is going to have on a number of industries. From banking perspective, we use encryption really on all our systems. What does that mean for that particular industry? The things like WhatsApp, you promised end-to-end encryption. A quantum computer within split second will actually break those algorithms. What's even more concerning is that threat actors are doing what they call harvest now, decrypt later. So going back to those data breaches we spoke about, so they're collecting all this data, whether it's encrypted or not, they're keeping it for a time where the quantum computer is commercialized. And then they look to decrypt it and use that data. So that's something certainly to be concerned about. DDoS attacks is something that has been, concern for a while, but it continues to be a concern. This is a major threat to organization and can cost businesses millions, because a denial of service means it disrupts all your operations. We'll also look at ransomware. Ransomware year on year continues to rise. And in fact, you no longer need to have a skill to deploy malware. There's what they call ransomware as a service. You just go on there, you buy your malware, and you deploy it to your targeted company, and you make money. So it shows you how critical it is for businesses to take cybersecurity seriously. And lastly, third-party risks. So third-party risks refers to risks that are posed to third parties or your suppliers to connect to your organization. So what threat actors are doing now, they've realized that the bigger organizations which have the budget are investing in sophisticated tools to protect their entities. However, their suppliers might not have the means to do so. Because they have a connection into their network, they will then attack or target the smaller companies, which are the suppliers, in order to get into the bigger organizations. So that is something that one has to also be aware of. They've also just shared ISSAC report has shared some of the top 10 emerging cybersecurity threats to look out for 2030. I suppose you can go through that once you receive the slide pack. So what are the consequences of all these attacks that we speak about? Financial loss, I think we've been speaking about this one quite heavily. If you lose your data, it can be sold to someone. If someone, attacks you from a ransomware perspective, it all boils down to financial loss. Operational disruption. So if you get attacked from, or you get a cybersecurity cyber attack, this can impact your operations to a point where you can't operate for some time until you can recover. Reputational damage. So if you lose people's data, you lose their trust. So it might tarnish your reputation, where you can lose customers, and that's not good for business, right? And then lastly, legal and regulatory ramifications. So once you get an attack, you are required to report it as well. And once you report it, upon investigation, you might also be fined again. So this cybersecurity business is expensive. From a personal impact, we spoke about identity theft and, of course, data loss. I've got a bit of a case study. Earlier this year, the SA Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund got a security breach, where some of the sensitive data was lost. So in a response, I actually thought this response was an interesting one. In a response, the first thing they did was they hired a cybersecurity firm. When I read this the first time, I was like, I hope it's to support their internal cybersecurity team, and it's not the first time they are looking at cybersecurity. But in any case, they went through an investigation. They had to close down their operations for some time whilst they investigated. They had to let their customers know that their data has been lost, and ultimately they had to look at cyber hygiene as well. things like updating their passwords, enabling two-factor authentication, and basically monitoring the network for any wide behavior that was taking place. If you look at the things that they did, it's not normal. Is this not normal cyber hygiene? It is, right? So if we're failing to get the basics right, we are really opening ourselves to all these cyber attacks. Impact in this particular business case study is they had regulatory ramifications. They had to report it to POPI Act, to POPI, just in terms of to the regulator, information regulator. They also had operational disruptions, as mentioned. So, talking about some of the responsibilities. From a legal and ethical obligation, we've got that legal as well as ethical obligation, as you've mentioned. From a legal perspective, we are legally obligated to protect the information of our stakeholders, customers, and so forth under the POPI Act. We also look at things like the GDPR as well, which also enhances the privacy rights. Even though this is it's more of a European Union, these are some of the things that we do look to and consider. I think the speaker before me also covered quite a large base of some of the regulations and acts that help you or help protect the stakeholders and customers. The implications of non-compliance is that you might face fines and penalties. You might suffer reputational damage. There might be legal action that is taken against you, as well as operational disruptions. So what can you do? I propose a defense in depth strategy. So what a defense in depth strategy really speaks about, and I'll take you back to that house analogy. You had the perimeter walls, you have your door, you've got the alarm. Before that thief can walk into your house, they have to jump a couple of hoops. And that is a strategy that gets employed from a defense in depth perspective, looking at from your outside threat protection, what your perimeter security looking like, going down to network security, endpoint application, all the way up to your actual data protection, which is actually your crown jewels. And some of the cybersecurity based practices, again, it just goes back to cyber hygiene. Using strong passwords, using the two-factor authentication, ensuring that your access control is in place, having regular software updates, cybersecurity education and awareness. I think this one is a very important one. I've once seen a picture of a soldier fully kitted, and they threw an arrow which just went through the helmet and killed him. And they say, well, this could be a whole cybersecurity controls, and that one person clicks on a phishing email and brings everything down. Locking up your data. When we talk about ransomware, we often say it's not a matter of if it will happen, it's a matter of when it will happen. And when it does happen, we hope you've got your backups and we hope you can recover. System maintenance, as well as managing your supply chain risks. In conclusion, cybersecurity is critical for all business. It's critical, I think we've established for each of us as on an individual level as well, to ensure that we are aware of what threats exist, to also invest in cybersecurity and making sure that we've got our general cybersecurity hygiene going well in the organization, but also understanding that we all have a responsibility towards our customers, our employers, our employees, and our various stakeholders. And that responsibility, yes, it's to put all those controls, but also to educate the people around us. if I just bring it back also a little bit to an individual level, from a WhatsApp perspective, do you guys have your two-factor authentication enabled? Do you know about it? Okay, I'm glad you know about it. But there's a lot of people who don't know. And because you know about it, you share with your family, you share with your friends, you say, hey, do you have your two-factor authentication enabled on WhatsApp? And that's how you equip the people around you. Lastly, yep, cybersecurity is a business risk. Hey, I'll pause it there and take some questions.
Okay, maybe just keep like the nice. Okay, can I start? Can I start, please? Look, I'm happy about the fact that you are here. I think I still feel we're not servicing ourselves if we don't answer the questions. How do you know that you are hacked? What is the first thing to do? You're coming from the bank. I was expecting that thing. I'll tell you why. The first people that are a weak link is the bank. You get a message that says, we observe that you've been hacked. Can you quickly change, right? And if you are not cyber aware, woke, you will quickly go to that because it's as if it's coming from the bank and the number is the bank itself. And I've got to be hard on you because WAPSA is good at this. And I know if we open you will share with us and you give us because we want to know. We know all the theory, but you know that you are hacked. What is the first thing to do, right? The second one, the dark web. You know that you can get a call. She can get a call, which is like it's coming from him, but it's not coming from him. And the issue about a grandmother or an uncle, that's a belated one. There's a latest one now that will say, please, it's coming from me. We are in this. And then I say to you, please, I want to be voted for president. I'm advocate, I want to be voted. And because you know, you like, and the statement is quick. Please, I'm sending a link and then you actually, and because we were talking about mis yesterday and disinformation, and it's dealing with a perception. And I'm alerting all of us that that thing is live and kicking. So there are latest methodologies that are such that a supervisor can receive something as if it's coming from an employee. And the number is the one of the employee. It's like this thing of people, I'm talking to supervisors now. When you are going to say, I want to fire Uchoko because Uchoko has been a victim of whatever, there's something that was lost from, or something happened in the laptop. Are you aware that from a forensic perspective, that might not be coming from that laptop of Toko? It might be the dark web pulling everything together. Please educate us.
Thank you. Moses Toboy from the DCDT. Maybe that statement, the last statement that cybersecurity is a business risk. We can maybe include that cybersecurity is a personal issue as well. Because obviously people are now targeting individuals. They're no longer targeting businesses only. And the question here is, maybe I would like to pose to everyone here in the room as to how many of you have invested in AVs, antiviruses for your devices? And how many of you actually do actually pay? Because most of us want to use free applications, and we are not aware that they actually do come with risks. So the question is, do we take investing in our protection seriously? Thank you.
Yes, am I?
Good morning, Sabelo speaking. I wanted to ask, so I'm pretty sure everyone, whenever you I'm gonna make it quite practically. Whenever you create a new account, right? And you have to enter a new password. There's always a suggested password, right? So now the question I'm posing to you is, what would you rate that suggested password from a scale of 1 to 10? How safe would you rate that? Because it's got all these unique characters, it's got these exclamation marks, these letters, and etc. How would you rate that?
I just wanted to find out at some point, if you're a business, you have to manage quite a lot because you also have to make sure that your own internal processes work. And so, how do you straddle that balance where you kind of like have to test out, for example, if you're a bank, that your security is in check, you know, cybersecurity, everything that you're selling to us, that it actually works. And so, what measures would you guys do just so that the customers don't get freaked out, you know, when you have to do your routine check, you know, checks and balances? And the other thing that I want to know is that cybersecurity is not new. Because we were all introduced to it. Well, I was introduced to it by the 419 scam phenomenon, which also came with identity theft, right? And so at the moment, there's already profile, right? Everything that is cybersecurity threat, etc., because of the 419 scam and because of the identity theft that came along with it, and because of everything else that we've suffered, especially as Black South Africans, there's a huge profile. There's a profile, it's underlying, it's almost like no one really wants to talk about it, but it's underlying. And so what I've realized is that the West has decided to use profiling of who actually decided to, you know, launch attacks via 419 to almost like indirectly remove certain demographics from the round table when issues around data, everything, because I think what they're scared of is the fact that if you were to introduce the new world to that profile people, we could be dealing with dark web sort of like on the forefront. Whereas at the moment, the dark web, you need to get a software or whatever. It's not accessible to everybody. But the profiled individual demographics that did the 419 scam literally made that whole thing like a thing where anyone can do it. So how do you so how do we move forward with the profiling? Because unfortunately, we all sort of like will form part of that demographic, and you know, whether we like it or not. How do you deal with that?
Okay, last question. I'll see after online question. Yes.
Okay. My, okay. My main issue and main concern right now, it would be the Google payments. Right? You guys have noticed that okay, with certain people using apps, when you updated your app, it first prompted you for the Google Pay, if you guys noticed. Now, what I want to find out is anyone here aware of what an NFC is and what it's capable of doing? Because I may know that you guys prioritize on cybersecurity in banks, right? But I'll give you the simplest way to steal someone's card for free. There's recent phones that come out with an NFC tag. For those that are good with coding, you can reverse code that into making it receive payment, right? Now, what happens if I do the same for the EPSA website? I reverse script the website into it giving information to me. How are you guys going to detect that? Because one thing I know is the minute that I gain access to y'all, the first thing I have to do is lock out every security protocol, right? So that I can remain undetected. But how sure am I that you guys are going to find me if I do that?
You are dangerous. There's another question online. Soweto Remote Hub, your hand.
Show
Cool.
it. Okay, can you hear us? Hello?
We can't, you sound very far, but you can try again.
Okay, let me try again. All right, so from our side, I think, thank you very much for the presentation. It's not a question, rather more of a comment from me as an individual within the tech space. I think to say we emphasize that people should get learners and driver's license. We emphasize that people should get training or instruction before they get a gun license. But why aren't we doing that for mobile devices so that we can curb the fight of people not knowing this? I think it's on the ISPs, it's on the manufacturers of phones and devices to get learning material on where someone needs to pass a certain course before they can unlock their phones or devices. Also, when it comes down to Windows, Windows is not only bloatware, it's spyware because it's free. It collects your telemetry, it collects what you do, it collects which websites you visit, and people don't know it. They use it because it's free. So the challenge is for South Africans that we don't have the money to sort of protect ourselves online. So that makes us the ideal target. So they're right. What Moses said is right. They're moving away from businesses and targeting individuals because the businesses have beefed up their security, but the individuals haven't. But in the interim, while we are finding a South African solution to antiviruses that can be shipped with devices with the help of ICASA, because this is all about regulation also. ICASA can put a law in place to say, if you're gonna sell devices in South Africa, they must have this training, and each and every time we must do a refreshers course. And on a closing note, I'd like to add to say that when it comes to reporting breaches or cybersecurity hacks, people don't know which platforms to go check if their email has been compromised or their phone number has been compromised. So we need to have more public awareness on that. And then my last closing note is to say that on the slide, you had a slide talking about the fines that they pay and the reputational damage that they face and maybe the criminal prosecution they might face. Experion they got a slap on the wrist. ShopRite, they got a slap on the wrist. GEPF, they were hacked in March and they reported in July. They got a slap in the wrist. So until we beef up that as the department, as DCDT, as ICASA, and ISPA, and everybody else, these big companies won't find it worthwhile beefing up their stuff. Thank you.
Okay, let's have that last question. Hey, these questions, this is your tea break, but anyway.
Thank you. It's Sanbonani. Hey, first of all, I'd like to say, Guti, this is an impressive event. I was invited here by my mom here, and I've been avoiding to come for some reasons. And I just want to add on something, is that one thing, us as a human race, I feel like we all dependent on this data capturing, whether it's from internet or whatever that we do, because of it's what led us to the age that we're at right now through information and data. And the more time advances and the more time advances, it's the more we get like risks such as this. So I feel like the main thing that we really need is education on how to protect ourselves. Like, and you also mentioned about defense in depth, and how do you guys like go about those things like in the banks and stuff like that? Yeah, that's my question right now.
Good morning, everyone. Name is Sandile Shabang, Dr. Sandile Shabang, Darap Mzansi. I just have a question from an individual. I just want to find out what happens to already compromised data. Let's say you as a bank, you find out that my identity has been compromised. Thereby, hackers have information like your ID numbers, where your plates of residence and all of that. What happens? What measures do you take afterwards? What happens to me as an individual? Do I need to change my ID number? Do I change my what happens? What's the story around that? Because I get everything else when it comes to the technologies and the protections and all of that. But what happens to the individual?
There's a lot of questions.
Done. Okay. Thank you so much for all your questions. I will try my best to answer them. So I think the first one was just around how do you know you are hacked? And what do you do? So in an instance where you most of the time if you yes you are. No. Not use this phone. In an instance where you suspect you are hacked or you experience any red flags, I would always recommend that you call in to I think it would be the fraud line. Yeah. The fraud line to actually report the case. So there is dedicated teams which would respond to and help you with the specific case, because it would be different just in terms of the type of tech vectors that might be taking place. And I think I'll bundle up this just in terms of answering the question on the compromised data. So what we do internally is we constantly browse through the dark web for customer data. This is actually something I report to, because we need to report to the board on a quarterly basis. And our detect team goes into the dark web and searches for any ISSA data, as the ISSA customer data. So this is card numbers, this is personal information, and so forth. We actually take down the details, and in fact, at a point, we also take down those actual sites. So we report on the actual numbers of how much personal data we have identified and have taken down. So that is something I would say I'm comfortable that we're quite on top of. We also have a threat intelligence team, which does things like threat hunting, which also goes out and searches for threat intelligence and so forth, and responds accordingly to the information that they find. So there's a lot of proactiveness that is taking place from an ISSA perspective. In terms of a customer, because I'm quite privy from a stance of what we do to protect the bank. In terms of we make use of things like AI to give us intelligence and to detect specific threats and so forth. We would need to do a little bit more investigation from a customer perspective to say what do we do for the man on the street if they're experiencing this. I know there's a lot of campaigns that take place in terms of spreading awareness in terms of cybersecurity. Where I'm finding it, also just speaking as a consumer, a lot of it I find from logging onto the app. As long as I'm not on the app, I don't feel like I'm being reached from a customer perspective. But that's something, and I think thank you for some of the feedback. That's something I could take back and investigate and have the discussions flowing internally. Okay, and then in terms of cybersecurity, if we're taking it if we're taking it seriously and pay for it, perhaps I can bring it back into the room. Who in here pays for securing their phones? You do. We've got two people. What is that? Pay for security. Paying for security. So paying for an antivirus or any other any other security. Yeah. Okay, so we've got more people. So I think maybe this serves as just an awareness, I think, for everyone else in the room as well. That we look into some of those paid subscriptions, and also continue having conversations with the different organizations which are letting or who are making these antiviruses available and so forth. I think there was a comment earlier on to say, why do we even have to pay for it? You know, so I think let's continue having those conversations and challenging the status quo.
I have a question around the suggested password.
So then there's a question around the suggested password. How I would rate those passwords. I actually have a link. I'll maybe share it with you, Solo, where you can actually put a password and it will tell you how long it would take to crack it. So based on the complexity of the password, that's one way of checking it. From just using my own opinion in terms of the passwords I've seen, they seem secure. And I say seem secure because I'm taking into consideration or putting the head of things that what you call this, things like quantum computing that's coming along. What's going to happen when that comes into play, which is why I think the industry is now looking into things like password, no password organization. So you don't use passwords, but actually use your biometrics to access your the systems and so forth. So we might maybe in the near future start seeing passwords being done away with. Biometrics. And then I had a question on the NFC tags. I will go and ask our detective team. And the reason why I'll ask them is because I'll stand here and say, no, I'm sure we'll pick it up. But we need to run it as a use case, definitely. Because what we do, as I said, this proactive protections in place, but there's also proactive detection capabilities in place as well. So from an organizational point of view, I'll say, yes, I'm sure we've never had an incident of that sort. But again, from a customer perspective, if somebody does that on an individual's phone, how would something like that be detected? Does the responsibility then shift from a bank to an individual? And what is the bank's responsibility in ensuring that we help protect our customers as well? I can see that, and I've got a couple of more questions. Okay, cool. Maybe just two more. Just how do we strike the balance? So I think in striking the balance in managing your cybersecurity is integrating your cybersecurity in your risk management. I'm sure, and it's an assumption, or you should be doing it, is doing risk management for your organization as a whole. Cybersecurity, it's important that you don't see it as a separate issue, but actually have it integrated in your company. Like I said, in your house, you just you even just naturally go and make sure that the door is locked. So when you're having those risk assessment, have those security, always have that security hat in mind. And then maybe I can just speak to the defense in depth question. I think you asked how we. As a bank to individuals or to companies? Yeah. So I'm not aware of cyber insurance cover from the bank in itself. I'll find out. I think the disadvantage I stand with here is that I'm not necessarily customer facing, but I'm more. What do we say? I'm more in the protecting the bank space. But I'll definitely find out and then potentially feedback to you. Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Nobile. Okay, we are bit behind schedule. We can have a tea break now for the next 10 minutes. Just collect your tea, collect your snacks, sit down for the next session. There is a QR code that has been sent. It will be uploaded. Please scan it as you come in. It's a post-event survey that will just help us your feedback about the overall event. Yeah, so please, we can break for tea, snack, light snack outside quickly. Please, 10 minutes so that we can end. We were hoping to be done at 12, but it looks like we'll be done before 1. Yeah. Thank you.
Solo, can you hear me?
Oh no.
That's nothing.
On mute. Yes, now we can hear you.
Great stuff. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I still audible, Sulu?
Yes, you are. I don't think you'll be able to hear us, but yes, you are audible. Maybe if you can also just play your presentation.
Yeah, remember we had this conversation. I cannot, not now anyway. I will share with soon, but yeah, not now. I'm not allowed to share now.
Okay, no problem. Take us through then.
Kindly be with me. So, kind greetings, everyone. I'm Advocate Dennis Rampomane. I am a practicing lawyer in IP and AI specialist. My topic today is on natural language processing, which is a subfield of artificial intelligence. The topic is Afrocentric AI, artificial intelligence with an African mouthpiece, the abstract. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the presentation and then engage with the audience. The abstract. The reason for the topic is sparked by lack of African representation in large language models and natural language processing, NLP. Africans are the oldest race on this planet, housing roughly 2,000 languages. African languages are just under a third of the global total, which is about 7,000 languages. What is more disheartening is that African languages are classified as low resource languages. This is going to be discussed in the NLP topic, under the NLP topic, pardon me. We see the dissipation of translation by Western languages, also known as high resource language, such as English and French, which are regarded as pivot languages as well. This argument, with respect, cannot hold weight. Africa is one of the world's largest economies, housing a potential of $1.3 trillion GDP. Further, there are a plethora of ethnicities, creed, and languages. My own emphasis. With that in mind, language becomes a barrier to trade within its borders. Language, a commodity taken for granted, but personified as a gatekeeper for Africa's wealth and prosperity. Youth unemployment, gender inequality, climate change, lack of data sovereignty, and lack of adequate infrastructure make achieving these feats an even tougher road to hoe. This paper addressed NLP, South African Intelligence Planning Paper, SAIP, the South African Artificial Intelligence Policy Framework, NIPIF, AU, NLP, and lastly, the conclusion recommendations in the introduction. The ubiquitous use of generative AI has made artificial intelligence a buzzword. Case in point is ChatGPT. Gen AI is a type of artificial intelligence technology that broadly describes machine learning systems capable of generating text, images, code, or other types of content, often in a response to a prompt entered by a user. Further, a majority of every Tom, Dick, and Harry regard ChatGPT as AI. I heard someone mention this in one of the presentations. This notion is misdirected. Built on about 1.6 billion parameters, ChatGPT is a Western concept constructed in English, a language spoken by some and often understood by few. I interpose. Solo, am I still with you? Or are you still with me?
Yes, still here. Yes, still here. Yes, still with you.
What is artificial intelligence? AI is a system that can simulate human thought processes by learning information, reasoning with that information, and applying rules to draw conclusions. Of interest, AI is a concept that's about 70 years old. For the purpose of this paper, I'm not going to dwell on the history of the artificial intelligence. There are about 7,000 languages globally. A few shots fired across the board. Wikipedia has recorded only about 35 African languages in its database. Natural language processing, native languages context. Topic number 2. Have you ever been frustrated or predictive text on mobile devices, laptops, and even personal computers and never recognize our dialect? Have you ever tried prompting the name Tabo and the predictive text returns it as Thanos, part solution to the problem? Natural language processing. Now, what is NLP? Like I've mentioned before, NLP is a subfield of artificial intelligence, linguistics, and computer science, and focuses on enabling computers to process natural language. Madodongwa and Marivati state that local native languages are classified as low-resource languages. Further, they state that it is essential to build the resources for these languages so that they can benefit from advances in the field of natural language processing. It is out that NLP helps the computer machine to attempt the conversion from one language to another. Further, it can also assist in learning and prediction, sentiment, or opinion from sentence or text. Further, they prefer that contextual chatbots and virtual text assistants are not widely used, but they mostly understand a limited number of languages, such as English. As such, South African native languages do not have enough resources to build such contextual chatbots and virtual text assistants. This basically means our own South African native languages are deemed low-resource languages. Therefore, the resources for native languages need to be created so that they can be used to build software agents that understand South African native languages. These types of functions are both arduous and quite exorbitant. I interpose. With the above mentioned, language translation and the quality thereof is dependent on data augmentation. Catherine and Marivati define data augmentation as a method that generates a copy or unique data of the data by slightly altering the existing data. They prefer that the data augmentation aims to increase the quantity of data that is available to train the system. Surely this connotes biasing and hi, Solo, you saying something?
So
Pardon?
Well, his voice is.
Your voice is muffled. We can't hear you clearly.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're better.
So where did you miss me? Should I just continue?
Yes, you can just continue.
Great stuff. Surely so I say the profit data augmentation aims to increase the quantity of data that is available to train the system. Surely this connotes biases and inaccuracies in language translation. In other words, the context and language are lost in translation. There has been recent interest in investigating approaches for training systems for languages with limited resources. And one particular approach is the use of data augmentation techniques. South Africa is a multilingual country with 11 official languages, 2 of which are European and 9 are African. The African languages are Sepedi, Sotho, Setswana, Seswati, Chivenda, Chitsonga, isiZulu, isiNdebele, isiXhosa, and on the other hand, European languages are English and Afrikaans. The aforementioned languages are the official languages of South Africa. However, Even though Madodonga and Marivate alluded to 11 official languages, sign language is deemed the 12th official language. This was by the president who signed the sign language as a 12th official language on the 18th of July, 2023. And even tougher to is that Braille translation is quite exorbitant than normal text. To rub salt into an already infested wound, little to nothing has been written on NLP and sign language. South Africa is a challenge with the 9 African languages because they're resource poor. The latter refers to low resource languages, as I've mentioned before. One of the biggest challenges regarding native languages, language translation, low resource language, is that it is trained on limited data. Another downside to NLP in lieu of native languages is a shortage of curated and annotated corpora to enable them to benefit from the natural language processing. NLP practitioners clutch down at straws to clean these data sets that involve the removal of special language characters and stopwords. An upside is the usage of techniques such as synthetic minority oversampling technique that can be adopted when the learning is done on an imbalanced data set, since it solves the problem of class imbalance. The need to retain the context of the sentence after augmentation cannot be overemphasized. There are, however, several data augmentation methods that have been proven to improve performance on various NLP tasks such as text classification, but it is not common practice to apply these data augmentation methods for tasks such as machine translation. There's some debate about language translation, however. Marodong and Marivate argue that English and Afrikaans are resource-rich languages. The two train on something called neural machine translation. Further, English-French neural machine translation gets trained. Afterwards, the model initializes another NMT model to be used on low resource and high resource pair, such as Uzbek and English. This is called transfer learning. In this case, the low resource languages investigated for transfer Uzbek and Hausa, Turkey, and Urdu. Further, words are then split with bytes pair encoding to maximize the overlapping vocab. However, even though zero-shot learning trains on little to no data, one of the modules called XGBoost performed well and is compared to other models. Third topic, South Africa's artificial intelligence planning paper, as well as the South African artificial intelligence policy framework. Even though South Africa currently lacks AI legislation, regulation, or official policy that dictates or guides the ethical use thereof, there's little legal literature about it. However, not all is doom and gloom. The upside of the planning paper are the following. Some of the upsides. The Department of Communications and Digital Technologies established an AI Institute in 2022, and the Department of Science and Innovation has established a Center for Artificial Intelligence Research in past years. Page 18 speaks of an AI policy that must be inclusive of, amongst other things, integrated infrastructure framework, my own emphasis. This speaks to the United Nations SDG Goal 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Further, this is in line with 2 of the 7 drivers shaping the future of work in the AU AI white paper, namely policy formulation and infrastructure. Page 19 thereof of the planning paper deals with the deployment of AI. And lastly, page 24 of the white paper, which is in line with the medium-term strategic framework priority 3 on education, as well as the UN SDG 4, quality education. On a similar wavelength, the South African National Artificial Intelligence Policy Framework was drafted in August of 2024, and it can be considered to be the first step in the actual development of national AI policy. NIPEF's problem statement consists of 4 pillars. The approach can be taken towards developing an AI policy that is of future triangle. Future triangle integrates push of the present, pull of the future, and weight of the past. This type of approach is recommended because it is holistic and analyzes historical constraints, driving forces, and future aspirations which will mold AI in South Africa. The push of the present speaks to the future of AI in South Africa, and it is shaped by 4 quantitative factors, and they are technological advancement, economic necessity, social demands, and policy momentum. The pool of the future refers to the plan envisioned in the NDP 2030 document, where South Africa eradicates hunger, inequality, and poverty. The weight of the past refers to the obstacles which are impediment on our road to change, and we seem to be able to conquer them. These hurdles are historical inequalities, digital divide, lack of regulatory frameworks, and institutional inertia. NIPF has 12 fundamental components which can be characterized as a support behind the implementation of the goals and objectives of the national AI policy. Of importance and of relevance for this paper, the final component, the promotion of cultural and human values and its aims, is to ensure that the development of AI is aligned with societal values and promotes environmental sustainability and human well-being. Although Orman doesn't discuss cultural values, he mentioned this in his piece. The same cultural values and heritage dissipate with the context and language lost in translation during these NLP processes. Organizations such as Lelapa, AI's Vula Vula, Big Science's Bloom, which is an LLM built on about 160 million parameters, South African Center for Digital Language Resources, SADILA, an organization assisting with the preservation of the new language by the San people, and recently Nigeria's multilingual large language model developed by Awari built on 14 million parameters, help launch Africa's boil in the proverbial AI race. For the topic, AU and AI. In April 2024, an AU-AI multi-stakeholder consultation took place. I remember this is a buzzword in a lot of these presentations. The consultation sought to address the following: facilitating inputs into the draft AU-AI strategy, identifying key strategic elements of the AU-AI strategy, broadening understanding of African AI needs from various stakeholders, and lastly, deepen awareness of the risks of AI use and development in Africa. The main aim of the multi-stakeholder consultative session on the development of the continental strategy on AI was to have an African AI voice or solutions by Africans for Africans to solve African problems. A shift from a more Eurocentric vantage point. Professor Ponyo, in one of the sessions, mentioned having Afrocentric AI solutions to our African problems and our shortcomings. To lament this, in July 2024, the African Union Executive Council endorsed the AU Continental AI Strategy during its 45th ordinary session in Accra, Ghana. The strategy underscores Africa's commitment into an Africa-centric development-focused approach to AI, promoting ethical, responsible, and equitable practices. ChatGPT uses about half a liter per 5 queries. An Olympic-sized swimming pool is emptied after every blockchain transaction. These fly in the face of the UN SDG 12, dealing with responsible consumption and production. Nigeria's national artificial intelligence strategy holds that their position reinforces the importance of AI as a means of differential advantage in the global ecosystem of fragmented yet intrinsically linked global supply chains of AI knowledge and innovations. Amongst other things, it is a strategic bridge that will address most infrastructural constraints in emerging markets and provides a leapfrog for nuanced innovations. When all is said and done, the Nigerian artificial intelligence strategy has a one-size-fits-all approach, just as NIPF does, which is not feasible, advocating for sector-specific requirements. Orman posits this as well. There's no mention of NLPs and LLMs, etc. I concur. The conclusion: AI that is policy specific is required in this race. Adequate legislation is needed with proper timeframes. The inclusion of NLP and LLMs in these policies is of vital importance. African governments need to invest more money into these projects, not only to train LLMs, but also in the preservation of culture, heritage, and language translations. And I reiterate that the organizations such as Lelapa, AI's Vula Vula, and Big Science's Bloom, and the SADILA, and all the work that they do, and Nigeria's large language model actually help launch the ball in our proverbial AI race? Thank you. So we're still there.
Thank you, Dennis. Can you hear me? I don't know if there are any questions in the room. I see 2 hands. I'll just go around.
Thank you, Dennis, for taking the learnings into academic papers. It's an academic paper. One of the things which we need to do as Africans is to write papers. But I want to problematize your topic. In curriculum, we talk about redeveloping as opposed to translating, because these are 2 different things. The question then is, as we want to Africanize AI, are we looking at, for example, doing what Tanzania has done, redevelopment, not translation, for the purpose of preserving the language, culture, and everything? Because translation, you can lose everything. An example now, you can go now to Facebook and you write India Ekaya. They will translate and it will be something else. What are we talking about? And I'm doing this because I'm passionate. It's my teen student, and I want the paper to be so all-encompassing and address the issues. The second one, the Nigerian part. Nigeria, it has been in the forefront with AI. Nigeria has been I think one of the African countries, or one of the rooms in Africa, one of the rooms that has taken it decisively to train people in AI free of charge, to also begin to talk to research and what we're talking about, the issue of data, accuracy of data, insofar as AI is concerned. The question then is, when we Africanize, for example, we want to deal with sign language. Sign language is a different language. It has got its own terms. It's like the Nama language. How are we going to do this? And I want finally to give a case. I was at WIPO. There's an instance where the whole world now is looking for LLMs in our cultural languages. What do? They come to Moses and say, Moses, we have 10 million. We can fund you, man. Can you just find a way of concocting this? And they run to our WhatsApps. They run to our apps because they are not ours. They run to our Facebook so that they can develop these LLMs, because that's where we speak in all languages. What are we talking about, Dennis?
So can I answer that question? When you go forward?
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. Council, thank you for those questions. Yeah, the first one is quite interesting, Council, because I think we should use redevelopment and translation synonymously. I'm saying this because the way I try to tackle my paper, you mentioned also the example of Facebook. That's what I talk about when translation, language gets lost in translation. It's not only language, also cultural values. And then you mentioned the Nigerian aspect of things. You know, Council, and you're also privy to same, since ZAIGF, after meeting the tremendous team that we have now, these are the things we've been talking about, working in silos and collaboration. It's still lip service. It's still lip service. If we're not going to set this industry and try to assist and push this envelope forward, then we're not going to get anywhere, honestly.
Okay, next question.
Hi, Dennis. I'm actually going to play devil's advocate for you, because I think it's important to. Oh, okay. Because I think it is important to also put yourself from another perspective, and that would be the perspective of the person who you are trying to advocate your African situation to. And my thing to you is, if you think about it, a lot of there is depth, and it might sound like I'm contradicting myself. But what I want to say is, currently at the moment, there is a lot of literature, vast literature that was written, right, by the colonists when they came in 1652. They wrote the Xhosa. Like, we need to know that. They wrote the Zulu, the Sotho, everything. Technically speaking, they own the intellectual property rights. Every single person who is a Xhosa, a Zulu, a Sotho, everything. And so anything that has to do with the modification of that intellectual property, what does that mean? Do we now, like, do we have to go and ask for permission from British Council, for example, because they have those books? Do we have to go and ask for permission from, the German Institute? So what I'm saying to you is that as you develop your paper, I think you also need to realize that at some level we lost control, and we have not been able to take back that control. That control impinges, for example, what you said about NLP, because the neuro-linguistic programming that a lot of Black people are under has also been developed. For example, when you move and we migrated from the agricultural era into industrial revolution, he gets the term "itafile." That is not a Xhosa word. That is not in Sesotho. "Itafula." Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, when it gets to culture, we really, really have to redevelop. And I don't know if I'm like, literally, that's why I'm asking you this. Like, it is literally a minefield. So from a business perspective, if I am a business guy and I own this and I've got access to this and it's at Wits, it's at Oxford, why do I want Black people to now come here and tell me stories, because I've already factored them in, because I've got the books. They don't really matter. That speaks to the colonization of digitization and all of that. Because if you own the intellectual property, I don't physically need you. I don't need your thinking, because I've actually done the work. And I probably know more Xhosa. Well, I've got access to more Xhosa than you ever will. Because if you look the way that you speak Xhosa now, it's technically speaking very urbanized. It's lost its depth. You don't even do half the things. You don't even know what impact was used for. You understand what I'm trying to say? So when you develop your paper, like, these are the things I would suggest that you look at and that you interrogate. You don't have to answer me. But I'm just saying, these are some of the aspects, these are some of the things that we've lost. And I feel like 94, we had an opportunity to address them, so that when we do the migration, from analog to digital, because it's also us as people, we might have, we might be able to arrive, in the world. But from where I'm standing, I don't know, it's going to be very difficult to make case why we should be included, especially on our intellectual property currently.
I'm confused. Dennis?
Well, thank you for that. No, I think I know where she's coming from. And the reason why I chose this topic, I was talking to Sabelo. Zim was in the room. I don't know why you guys never put Zim on the spot. The reason I mentioned, or I decided to write a paper of this nature. Firstly, I know it's going to be contentious. Secondly, we need to sit down with our elders and have these discussions. I feel lost. I feel lost as a person. I feel lost as a young person. All my grandparents have passed on, my father's passed on. So those are trees of knowledge that have been cut down. So yeah, it's I'm still going to sit down. It's just a paper that I just wanted to put out there. I think I'm going to convert it into a PhD, an actual PhD thesis, and I'll sit down with the experts and we'll take it from it. But I mean, regarding the intellectual property, copyright. You're an IP lawyer. Copyright after 50 years is in public domain, so it's accessible. But I get where you're coming from, and thank you for your input.
Sabelo, they put you on the spot. Do you want to add something? Are you happy? Okay, Dennis, parting shots so that we can wrap up the session.
Firstly, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the elders in the room, and yeah, it's a lot of knowledge economy. Thank you to Advocate Ntsaliwe. You guys don't understand how much Advocate Ntsaliwe puts pressure on me. Advocate Ntsaliwe puts pressure on me. She guides me, guys. Whoever, I repeat this, I mentioned it at ZAIGF in February. Whoever needs a supervisor, bother, because she has a lot of students now, apparently because of me. But yeah, I had to put my counsel on the spot. But yeah, and the young people in the room, please make use of these opportunities, network and learn. Stop spending so much time on TikTok, because you guys have access to data, you have access to information. The gentleman there, the white hat gentleman that we need a conversation. The white hat hacker, we need a conversation, and yeah.
White hat hacker.
Thanks,
But anyway, he's busy hacking. Please get off Wi-Fi. Okay. Dennis, thank you so much. I'm actually just gonna wrap this up currently so that we can still be on track for lunch. There is a course program at the University of Pretoria that offers AI in literally all social issues, from climate justice right down to linguistics, that maybe you would be interested in looking at, and maybe taking up. It's online, but I've asked Advocate Ntsaliwe to share it with me so that I can share it with you as part of the distribution pack or resource pack. I am going to wrap up the program, the whole School of Internet Governance, by thanking everybody online and in the audience for your participation. I think over the past 3 days, I've had a lot of questions, even just myself. There's a lot of reading that we all just need to get into just to widen our knowledge. I mean, right now we are talking about language. I didn't even know that British colonial system or coined what we now is Xhosa. I don't know how factual this is. I must just go, fact check it. But just even the idea of that, or they coordinated it, or they put it together. Oh. Wow. You see what I mean? So there's a lot of knowledge in the room. Just during your lunchtime, network with each other, network with each other. I think we underestimate how much knowledge is actually sitting down and absorbing all this information, the kind of questions that they pose at our speakers. That shows you just the depth of knowledge that's out there. But I'm not going to be the one that closes the program. I'm going to allow our chair maybe to close it with her parting shots and officially declare the program closed. I will just say that I am waiting for the certificates that she will sign that I will send to you electronically. There's a register circulating. Please sign it. Please sign the register. So that we can know who you're sending what to. But I'll just allow my chair just to come forth and give us a closing address. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to greet everyone in the room. I'd like to greet the multi-stakeholder committee. I'd like to greet the faculty. I'd like to greet all the learners present. I'd like to greet everyone, all the speakers, and I'd like to thank you all for coming. So I didn't prepare anything in closing. However, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming. And before I actually address you and just thank you for being present and for participating, I would just like us to give a round of applause to Methu. She works really day and night to make sure that we've got platforms like this. The forum, she works day and night for the forum. And I think we nearly didn't have a school of internet governance in October. And she made sure that she works day and night just to have everyone in the room. And that the speakers that we have, I think we had very great speakers. We had good quality speakers. The conversations in the room were, I think, on another level. I think when we started, one of the speakers mentioned that they were worried about how there's little knowledge about internet governance. However, the conversations that we've been having, I must say I'm also surprised on my side that we are actually speaking to people who understand internet governance, who understand IT-related matters, cybersecurity, and just everything that was put on the table. So I think we just need to commend her for her great work. And the sacrifices that she's made. I'd like to thank ZADNA. I'd like to thank ISSAC, Girl Hype. I'd like to thank YEM and everyone for hosting the remote hubs. I'd also like to thank DCDT and Tata Moses. I think we need to also thank Tata Moses. I think we had a meeting regarding School of Internet Governance at night one day, and it was the three of us. When Tata Moses also sacrificed his time. So I'd like to thank the entire multi-stakeholder committee, the colleagues from the South African Internet Governance Forum Multi-Stakeholder Committee, and to also just encourage you all to partake in internet governance events, internet governance, anything related to internet governance. Like I said, there's a website and there will be a call for nominations. I'm not sure if I can put it out, but I think because we're in the room, you are active and want to be active within the space. So there will be a call for the next, for multi-stakeholder committee. So I'd like to encourage us all to partake in these conversations and to be in the room. Thank you all. It was a great event. It was a success. And yeah, let us keep going. Let us keep the conversation going. We appreciate you all. And I think I can declare the school closed. Thank you.
We can go have lunch downstairs.
You had a question.
Yes.